Welcome to the Family Banking Show with your hosts Rob, Derek, and John, where we dive into the world of the infinite banking concept and discuss personal banking strategies to secure your legacy and build generational wealth. We're glad you're here, and we hope this episode serves you well.
If you're interested in learning more about setting up your own family banking system, send an email to thefamilybankingshow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Family Banking Show. We are your hosts, Derek, Rob, and John. Guys, how's it going this week?
Good. How you guys doing?
I'm doing okay. We are, and I know we're Minnesotans, so we're going to talk about weather in some form or another. But I just have to put it out there that next week is going to be worse than Antarctica. And I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm not going to be depressed about it or anything or be in a slump. But just for the listeners, just to make sure that everybody knows,
Some context.
it's probably warmer where you're at. Here are the lows for our next week. You ready? -13, -16, -12, -8, and -3. So that's our Monday through Friday next week. So looking forward to it. But other than weather, things have been going well.
Yeah. Nome, Alaska. Where are you at?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Get all your space heaters out if you've got one in the house. Keep your basement nice and warm.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have dogs? That's our kind of biggest challenge. And when it's this cold, is our dogs aren't that used to like that cold of weather, so they'll kind of run out and then they'll just stop and look around and like lick their paw, and like you would not last a second if you were not a house dog.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've had even to walk out and like pick them up and bring them in, like, come on.
Yeah.
You can do
Their
it.
paws will freeze to the ground or to the snow. That happens to my
But
parents.
it's funny, they just look confused. Like they're like, huh? Like what's going on out here? It's funny.
All right. Well, guys, this week we're going to take a little bit of a break from our unveiling institutions and get back to our faith and finance series. In particular, we're going to be discussing tithing. What is it? Why is it important? How can somebody tithe? And even what does it have to do with family banking and just wealth planning in general? So, Rob, why don't you kick us off? Give us a little bit of some verses from the Bible to help us orient our conversation here.
Yeah, and this is like I think one of the verse that really speaks to us. I think maybe the kind of the main message of our talk today is about tithing. It's where you are, where is your heart, and with you and your relationship with God. But 2 Corinthians 9:7, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And I just think that speaks to it. Like you shouldn't be stressed out about it. You shouldn't be like overthinking it. When it's done, when you are giving back to God in thankfulness for what He's given you, it is a joyful thing. You're thankful to give back what wasn't yours. But you'll know, I think you'll know in your heart where that limit is, where that point is. It should be something that's meaningful, and I think that's just the key to it is it's that relationship between you and God. I think the first part is acknowledging everything you have is from God, and once you acknowledge that, then you should be happy to give back what isn't yours to begin with, the blessings that have been poured out upon you and your families. But finding that sweet spot of where it's meaningful. That's kind of even like, okay, if we want to tie it into life insurance, like meaningful, it's, meaningful and manageable. There we go. There's the tie-in that I didn't think about till just now. Meaningful and manageable. It's kind of the same idea. It's a meaningful giving back to God, but it's something you can manage as well. So there, I looped it in, guys. Full circle.
Yeah, it's that idea. I think it's even further in 2 Corinthians in that passage, but where it's like, what do you have that you haven't received?
Right.
And everything in this life, but particularly money is a big part of that. Where I've had a couple of people actually ask me like, what percentage of my income should I give? Or, should it be, as a business owner, should it be gross revenue? Should it be net profit? Should it be, and I don't have a specific number. I don't know where God's leading you. I don't know what's in your heart. I don't know if you're clinging to those dollars and loving it and having money be your idol. Like I'm not inside of your mind and in your heart. So that's where it truly is just a matter of the heart. And I think that's more of a kind of a New Testament theme. Like we're under grace and not the law.
Mhm.
And that's where like I think we're led to be even more abundantly like compelled to give and be generous, um, knowing the grace that we've been given, So
Amen.
uh, there's no like cookie cutter answer. There's no like 10%. Technically, I think that is the definition of a tithe. The tithe is the 10%. So,
Yep.
or so um, I don't think that's the universal catch-all answer. Is just 10%. Um,
Right.
'Cause that could be unhelpful, and that could be even far less than what God's leading you to, or it
Yep.
could be
Yep.
more honestly than where
Right.
you're at season.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I think that was real convicting to me is, what am I focusing on? Where is my heart? Is it on just focusing on money and making money and not losing money? So yeah, it's that bigger picture, John, are we aware of the gift of God? We're living under grace. Where does that lead our heart to go? So yeah, real convicting.
It's always a fine balance or a fine line of, trying to figure out, wanting to be faithful and giving as much back to God as he's given to us. And then also being wise with what he's given you.
Right.
That's where John's saying maybe it's not a hard and fast percentage of your
Right.
income, but it's being able to give willingly, freely, unexpectedly, even. I think that's sometimes the best opportunities when God presents you with an opportunity to give. It's when you least expect it.
Mm.
It's the waitress that's been at your table, and maybe she's a single mom and working two jobs or whatever, or it's the Christmas season and you see a family who's we've got families like this at our church where mom doesn't know how she's going to get Christmas presents for her kids.
Mhm.
Oh, for Pete's sake, why can't I help and take care
Right.
of those people in our own congregation? And I think the big thing is I would encourage our listeners, if you are a regular attending or a member of a local church, that's where tithing should be given first priority. There are other organizations and charities out there that you can certainly give to, but I always suggest give it back to the church that you're a regular member of, because you are taking a lot of resources and time from that pastoral staff and the volunteers at your church. And so being able to support that mission is super, super helpful and critical to the life of your local church.
Yeah, and I think
What are you guys' thoughts on serving as kind of a form of a tithe? Giving your time and your expertise as a form of a tithe as well.
I think that's huge. That is a major component of giving back and thankfulness for what you've given, right? Because God's church doesn't run on its own. It
Yeah,
requires God's people to participate. And that's a massive your time is sacrifice of your time. I think that is a key component to it. Yes.
Ultimately, I think that's more so the end goal is your
yeah,
time and your like the quality of the time too. Like
Hmm.
we just gave money to a bunch of churches, but like never lived on purpose or lived on mission and never
Right.
like engaged with um, anyone about our faith, then really it kind of feels like
Yeah.
one foot out type of approach where if you're all in and your heart is towards advancing the gospel, if you're part of your local church, then of course, yeah, your time would be like a natural outflow of you committing, towards that mission in addition to, yeah, your money. So I've never
Yeah.
actually like viewed it though, like I guess in that light, honestly. So I think that's really helpful though to think of it like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Sorry, Rob. I'll let you chime in here in just a second, but I think that the danger is also the other side of you're only serving 100% and you're not giving any financial resources as well. I think there's that's a conflict that can occur as well. So just being mindful of, you know, serving as an act of tithing. To John, to your point, like it's even more critical than just giving money to your church. But don't only serve and not also partner with your church financially. So yeah, Rob, what were your
Right.
thoughts?
No, that was as you guys are talking, it really it just comes to the heart, right? If your heart is thankful for what God has given you and in saving you through Jesus Christ, and you should desire to give back in some way, your time and your finances, like that should be a thing that you want to do, and it's a heart thing. Because we just don't want people to just stroke a check on a Sunday and say, I'm good. That's not heart. So that's kind of the convicting part that maybe if anyone's listening to this, like that's the convicting part that always hits me is where's my heart at and what am I doing to truly give, in a way that is that right fit between me and God. And you'll know where that is. You'll know where that perfect spot is when you get there. And then you're always striving to, kind of adjust it. And anyway, it's a heart thing. I keep hearing that when you guys are talking, and I think that's the key to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of circling back to Rob, or sorry, Derek, I'm glad you mentioned, there's church giving, and then you talked about like
Hmm.
the waitress, that it doesn't
Yeah.
just have to be church giving. And honestly, I think there's so many like really fun ways to
Hmm.
give, talking through some of those examples. I'll just give an example that like kind of speaks to preparing for windfalls. And part of that is maybe having, a properly structured infinite banking policy and being able to capture that and provide, for your family in that way. But part of that can be like, okay, I'm probably, my family, we sold a real estate asset last year, and we knew that we would have an approximate, proceeds from it. And I think just a really like humbling part of that process was praying through together, my wife and I, like, what should we do with the giving portion of it? Like, we don't want to just
Hmm.
cling to every dollar that we get there. It's just it was just kind of a special, kind of miraculous situation anyway, that we were able to be in that position. So, um, as we were praying through it, my in-laws actually started like they initiated a new office of a nonprofit organization that helps like vulnerable and like poor families, um, yeah, and supports children really. So it's called Together for Good. It's a really, really great organization, and it just so happened that those timelines met
Hmm.
where they did funding for that, and the exact number that we thought would be a healthy number to give was the exact number that they needed to even
Yeah.
start that. So like
Yeah.
I'll just say God works in like really, really cool ways that just shows that like especially if you're prayerful about it, like not just I avoid honestly like automatic recurring giving, and I'm not saying there's a bad thing to it, but I love the idea of like, consciously giving and praying
Mm.
through it while I'm doing
Hmm.
that. So um, what are some other examples that y'all can think of like maybe other ways?
Yeah, one of the coolest things that I think can occur in the life of a church is some sort of big financial building project.
Mm.
And even, I was thinking back to an example in the Old Testament of First Chronicles 29, and I think Rob, you had talked about this earlier before we started recording, but just the idea of the Israelites were finally going to build a temple and worship God to where he wanted them, where he wanted to be worshiped. And it says that the people rejoiced because they had given willingly with the whole heart. They offered freely to the Lord. And I think that's so true even today of like tying finances of the life of a church and the worship of a church, being able to participate in a building project or paying down your mortgage or something like that, some big financial push, it stirs a lot of excitement and joy in
Hmm.
the life of your church to be able to be a part of that mission or to see that as something valuable that God wants to
Yeah.
take place. So that's
Yep.
a
Yeah.
that's a big one for me is, you see a vision to what the church is going to do with the donations, the giving that has occurred, the offerings there, and there being a lot of excitement and joy being able to participate in it.
Yeah, yeah, seeing God at work. Yeah, and another thing too is as we all have infinite banking style policies, early cash value policies in our family banking systems, and if you look at them, you can see that death benefit over the years. It gets surprisingly, staggeringly high, and then that's an opportunity. What a great way, uh, when you're called home to bless the church that you've been that your church family, and taking a portion of that death benefit and giving them a tax-free gift. Um, that's a fun idea too. Someday a way to just bless the church for all the years that you've been a part of it and been your family, to give back in that way. I mean, what a blessing. So that's another way you can tie it in, to your whole life policy in a way that if you didn't have one, you might not have that ability to give back in that way, and that especially in a tax-free manner like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
just
that's
thinking
like,
about how to do that practically, right? It could be as simple as just listing your church or whatever charity you wanted to give to as a partial beneficiary, or maybe a complete beneficiary. Maybe they get 100% of the death benefit. That's how it would be done, to where you could structure a certain percentage, whatever you had in mind, and that would automatically be given to that organization. So yeah, really cool idea.
and that idea speaks to, I think the Old Testament is like that first fruits idea of,
Mhm.
your best and the first of
Mhm.
what you receive is offered, not necessarily like, okay, I now have everything I need. I can spare this amount type of deal. So like, especially even in the death benefit, if it's a 10% or 20 or whatever you choose, that's firstly taken out, and then your family receives, or whoever else receives, the rest.
Hmm.
So that I think also speaks to that, like the heart of having it like initially and primarily like designated from the outset.
Yeah.
What other thoughts or comments do you guys have about tithing and giving an offering back to God here before we wrap up today's episode?
One more verse that I love is Luke 6:38. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. And it just talks to, don't be afraid to give back to God what he's given you, and give abundantly, because he will just turn around and bless you even more. And I just love that. Like, God loves a cheerful giver. He loves someone who God says to test him in your giving and see what he does. And as a matter of fact, John, you reminded me of when you said that you had just like that right amount to give to that organization. That reminds me of several times. This is just, and to say, I don't know, it's a God thing, but I'll say, you know what, God, I'm just gonna give just act this. It's on my heart to give you more than what maybe I was typically planning. And I'm just saying, how many times have I gotten an unexpected bonus from work for like that amount plus more? It's happened enough times that I'm like, this is kind of weird, actually. So I've seen that happen many times. Like, okay, God, you said to test you. All right, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's happened. It's like, amen. That's just crazy.
Nice. The only last thing I'll say, and I say this to basically all my clients, if not every single one, um, is that yes, like in infinite banking, by design and by default, you're coming out ahead with far more dollars in your life than you otherwise would, because you're avoiding guaranteed losses to taxes, interest, and recapturing a lot of that in your own system. But what that doesn't mean is that we're creating lovers of money and like just creating an idol for
Hmm.
you to worship, rather than to be even more abundant in what you're able to produce, both for your family and in the context of giving. And maybe we've talked about this in a previous episode, but like money itself is not evil. Love of money
Right.
is evil. And we can really be impactful in what we do with our money, particularly with the added cash flow that we'll likely have, especially generationally, if we do infinite banking and we understand how it's going to really benefit us to where we're able to give more, hopefully, and still live lives on mission and enjoy our lives and not feel slaves to financial pressures around us. So really just addressing the idea of like, who are we worshiping? Is it money? Is it God? And if it is God, then we'll be able to just give abundantly out of a joyful heart.
Yeah. Good word, guys. Thanks again for your thoughts and what you had to share. If our listeners are interested in learning more about setting up their own family banking system, you can, of course, reach out to us at thefamilybankingshow@gmail.com, and we'd love to sit down and schedule some time with you. All right, guys, have a good week. We'll see you in the next episode.
Yep. See you guys. Thank you for joining us. If you're interested in a conversation about anything we've discussed, you can find our contact information in the show notes below.
And subscribe, follow, and leave a review to help spread this message and to help families across the country discover the generational blessing of IBC. May God bless you, and we'll see you next time.